What's up, Rockstars? Welcome to my review of Cyberpunk 2077, the board game. This is in conjunction with CD Projekt Red. It's from Go On Board. I have now played it several times, actually, including even an earlier version in Essence Spiel. I'm going to tell you what I think about this current demo. Now, this is actually my first, I believe, fully fledged review since moving, and I apologize for the delay. I know that it's been a while since you've seen a video like this, and I had to look at the part too. So thank you to my sponsor, Into the AM. They make great shirts just like this, including pants, boxers, hats, tanks. They make it all, and they make fantastic apparel. Now, if you want to save 10% on top of anything like a Labor Day sale, you can save an additional 10% using the link in my description below. They seriously make some great stuff. I'm about to show off some new product that they have, so I will have that up for you shortly. But until then, you can still find the link down in the description below. Like I said, they have sales like around Labor Day that you can check out and save an additional 10%. With that code. Go ahead and do that. Thank you Into the AM for sponsoring this video, and thank you guys for supporting Into the AM, supporting this channel. I thank you guys so much. All right, now, this is a lot. One thing I want to make crystal clear here is why I call this a demo. It's because they requested I call this a demo, not a prototype. And the difference between it is actually important. It's not one I typically do because I talk a little loosely, as you guys know. However, obviously a prototype is something that is like pre-mass manufacturing, right? Like it is something that is made differently. So you can't go off of like all the components. For instance, the minis are resin. They won't be in the final product, right? However, a demo, more importantly, is just a snippet of the game. There are some games that you get that are almost fully fledged games, and I have prototypes like that that are like, this is an entire game. It's just not mass produced yet, right? And then there are ones like this that is just kind of a snippet. In this case, this is just the interlude plus a few things with the map book. I'll show that off. I'll also talk about kind of what I played back in Essence Spiel last year as well. But either way, this is the demo, so there's, you know, kind of some clarification around that. Okay, now, I think it's important to note the most important thing right up front, which is it fun to play, right? I mean, that's why we're playing a lot of these kinds of board games. There are the really thinky kind of board games, right? The more Euro games are deterministic, and it's more of like a puzzle that you're solving or building up of, you know, some kind of engine or something like that, and that's totally fine too. This kind of game is for people who like to roll dice, beer and pretzel, have a lot of fun, have a bunch of laughs, and in that case, it delivers in spades. Seriously, everybody that has played this with me has enjoyed it, has loved it, has commented on how much they like it, and in fact, I'm already being asked to play this again, even this little snippet demo. Literally, it's like the tutorial, and my wife's like, hey, maybe you and I can just sneak a game in, you know, after the kids go to bed or whatever, and just her and I, she wants to play it again, I want to play it again. It is just a lot of fun to play. The fun factor, very high here. I'll explain why. We'll get into the nuance, but if that's all you needed to know, there you go. It's a fun game to play. If you like the kind of games that I like, you're rolling dice, you're playing cards, you're talking fast, you're moving around, you're killing guys, you're doing objectives, you're gaining loot, you're crafting, you're getting new weapons, all that kind of fun stuff is in here and does really, really well, even at this early stage of the game. That being said, it looks like there's even more nuance and more, you know, kind of oomph to the game as you get further along outside of the tutorial kind of demo thing I have here, obviously. I'll talk about that too. Now, the other thing that a lot of you guys are really curious about, I know, is the timer and is the app. So let's go ahead and dive into that. Now, I've played this with the app and without the app. So back in Essence Spiel, I played it without the app, worked just fine. We just kind of used a timer or whatever. It was okay. Played it now with the app. The app definitely does enhance the things. Regardless, this is a timed game. This is a game where you're racing against kind of like the clock and like that you're kind of trying to move fast because it doesn't give you an amount of turns. It gives you an amount of time essentially, and you can cram as many turns as you can in that, which means you're trying to go fast and communicate quick and work together to do something and change plans in the middle of it and stuff like that. And that can be really stressful. So if that's not what you want, you might not like this. If you want a very casual sit down and play game, which I enjoy as well, of course, hence my wall of games here, and it keeps going on that way, guys, and a little bit on that way too. It's a lot. Plus, there's more in my garage. That's besides the point. The point is that This is a lot of fun. I find it really fun. It is really hectic, but then you get that cooldown period where you get to then plan and reassess and look at what loot you got, and I'll get into kind of the loot and corpses and, you know, crafting stuff and all that. But for now, like, just know that you are kind of like, oh, go real quick. Oh my gosh. Whew. Okay. All right. Where are we at? Right. That's kind of the gist of the gameplay. Now, when it comes to the app, right, when it comes to actually using the optional app, which it is optional, of course, all that means is any story they give, you can read it outside the app. And the timer, obviously, you can use your own timer. That being said, I do fully believe that you should play this with the app. Now, the app is not touched except for a couple of times, and it's never during the active gameplay. So, except for one exception. So essentially, the app reads the story, so it has like voiceover and stuff like that, which is okay. It's an okay voiceover. It's good for board games, but it's not like a really great like graphic novel or a audiobook is what I mean. So don't expect anything quite like that either. But either way, they do have that, and so you know it's got kind of the sound. When you're playing, it actually has a visual bar that shows kind of how much longer you have. You can glance at every now and then. You could do that with another timer. It automatically adjusts depending on the amount of people you have, and so it does that. The music's playing, which kind of is good. It also has verbal cues like 1 minute remaining, 30 seconds remaining, 10 seconds remaining. And so that really helps to just focus on the game instead of the timer, while still having the timer go in the background. And then lastly, there are a few nice things. Like I said, auto adjust based off players, but also there are some times where you can slow down time, just like the video game early, it just slows down the time. And so it's adding time, but it does it by slowing down the time. And so like the music kind of does that like distorted slow sound, which is kind of cool. And the bar changes, I think, a color and like goes slower, and then it kind of goes back to normal again. So you get that time bump. Doing that outside of the app would be a little difficult, just because normally you would have some kind of like timer thing like that you would either adjust, or you're futzing around on a phone with like a smart app, which in that case, you're messing around with the phone anyway. It's a push of the button. You just push it and it slows it down, and somebody else can do it too. And that's where this really is not a one-player game. It needs at least two for some of the objectives, but also because then while you're doing something, the other player can be, you know, touch the app real quick. So they have that, and they have a pause button, and that's really it. They have a complete thing, but, you know, that's only at the very end when it's, oh, yep, we finished, time didn't run out, right? So that's about it on the app, besides the fact that they do have a tutorial of some kind that isn't available yet. So I haven't been able to see it, but there's a little tutorial button, even on the individual scenarios. There's a little tutorial button. I don't know if it'll just be a video, if it's interactive. I don't know exactly that. But the demo itself, the interlude, the prelude, prologue, as they call it, kind of introduces that. But that's the app. I think it's really useful. I think it helps add immersion and really help with the gameplay. But you don't have to use it. That being said, it's kind of either your thing or not. Any time-based game, really, is typically just better with an app. So it's more you don't like the genre than I think you don't like having a phone make music for a limited amount of time and then tell you time's up, because that's really all it's doing. It's not like some crazy thing where you got your cards on there or something like that. It's not a Tebaru or anything like that. It's literally just you set it and then you go, and then it eventually ends, and then the next fight comes and you set it and then you go, and then you're not really fussing with it almost ever while you're playing the game. Now, there is one thing it needs to do. Now, again, this is a demo. This is not finished yet. There's still a lot of balancing, still a lot of game play to go. One of the nice things that Go On Board does is they ride a fine line between having it developed enough to where they're pretty certain they're good to go, right? There's not going to be any drastic changes. However, they can still incorporate user feedback or member feedback or backer feedback, or however you want to look at it. Either way, people having ideas, they can actually incorporate into the game. They've done it with all of their campaigns. And so I want to use this to kind of nudge one that's probably already in the works, but I didn't see it like a button for it or anything like that necessarily yet in the app. But eventually the app or / rulebook should have some kind of like timer handicap. If you're playing like with really strong players and you can play really well, it's just going to be an easier time. However, if you're playing with a kid or somebody who doesn't game as often or is just learning it while you've played it a whole bunch, you might want to add a little bit of a time handicap, a little bit of a time buffer for those people, or have some kind of easy mode. Now, I say that because, again, the balance is still being worked on. So As it stands, the last mission we have never won. We've tried multiple times. We've tried multiple times cheating in the way to where it's multiple times while starting out right where we left off in the last one, but so in other words, doubling and then tripling the time. We still weren't quite able to beat it. Now, I was playing with some of my children, and they're not always the best at these kind of games, especially thinking very quickly. So there was that little bit of handicap that if I could have just given us a little bit more time, that would have been helpful. And of course, again, they're still adjusting things. But some of the problem, I think, with some of the missions is you have to be in two different locations at once, and you have to deal with enemies. And the scaling with the amount of players is only time-based, really. There's not really anything else adjusted. There is no objective changing. There's no amount of enemies changing. So if there's a lot of enemies and you're playing 2-player versus 4-player, you could just simply deal with them better. Now, you do get more turns when there's 2 players because it's back, forth, back, forth, back, forth, right? But either way, I think it needs a little bit more adjustment for the amount of players and for players that might not go quickly enough. Because if you can bound both of them, then you kind of run into an issue where it just gets really, really hard. And the fact that I couldn't beat the prologue kind of shows that. At least, maybe I just suck. I don't know. But even if I do, I still want to be able to play the game. Maybe give me an easy mode, right, for the reviewer who can't play games or whatever. I'm sure that'll happen. I'm sure they can develop it. I have no problem with that. But I wanted to mention it here because I'm trying to say where it is right now. They're still kind of fine-tuning things, right? And the scaling isn't, I think, quite there for amount of players that it could be otherwise. Now, this prologue, it does do a really good job of teaching the mechanics, and I saw that there was a lot of confusion around what this game actually does, especially around the AI when it comes to what they showed off earlier. And I think this was an issue that Go On Board kind of did on accident, right? Obviously, they didn't purposely do this, and I haven't watched necessarily all those early videos in a long time, so I don't recall exactly what they're showing, but I remember a lot of people said that the enemies don't like move or interact or anything like that. That is literally in just the first prologue mission. So they kind of slowly introduce mechanics. So the first one, literally, they just sit there. There's no respawning. There's no moving or interacting with objectives or anything like that. They just kind of chill there, right? And you go and attack them or not. And in that case, like something like distract, which allows you to essentially like make a noise and have them like move into another room or something like that. Super overpowered, right? Because they're not going to move back in. So you can just move them out of the way and come in the other way. That is very short-lived. It's literally a single mission. And then eventually they start adding, okay, here's how the AI would work and how they would spawn. So then they start spawning new ones and they start moving around the board more. Now, it's not some crazy in-depth movement, but it is movement. And it does kind of do almost like an Overlord kind of one versus many style where you guys go, then they go, and then you guys go, and then they go. The way they go in yours is if you are in range, you know, like if you're like in the same room or something like that, you start by rolling the dice. When you roll the dice, you roll their dice and your dice. I'll get into the dice in a bit. But suffice it to say, for the most part, that was very short-lived. And very soon afterwards, they started spawning and moving around and making... And it's like priority, so they'll focus on objectives and focus on closing it in so you can't escape and stuff like that. So there's definitely more interaction there than I think some people thought, at least early on. Again, I don't know how much they've shown off, but at least from even just a prelude, that's what I can say. And honestly, the scenarios change all the time. The rules change all the time. I'll talk about that a little bit as well. But suffice it to say, I thought it introduced the mechanics very well, where the first one you play is quite basic, but you're really getting used to it. And then eventually you're crafting and symbols do extra things and you're able to get new quick hacks and stuff like that. And, you know, gain legendary cards and new weapons and all that kind of, like it adds to it, right? But at the start, yeah, they do just kind of sit there, but then they're moving around every other time. Okay, now I quickly want to go over the characters, because I always try to specify this. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed to find a review where there are different characters that I don't mention this, because sometimes I feel like characters don't do anything different. Because at one time, you don't want the super asymmetrical, I'm playing a totally different game. So at the end of the day, you're all playing cards, right? And so you're all doing quick hacks. You all have the same thing. So how different can the players feel? And the answer is actually quite a lot. And this is just from, I don't know if they're going to add more characters. I imagine they will, but for now, this is what they have. But like Panam here, for instance, she has her sniper. And so she has oh, look at that, it's right here. She has a card here. I know you probably can't read this, but there's a symbol there that essentially on her orange cards, not even the red ones, let her do a damage or attack anybody on the board. So she takes a quick snipe shot, right? And that is way different where you're over here, but you're busy helping your people over there. Quite different. Also, she has her unique quick hack, in this case Ice Pick, that allows her to move around more or allow her teammates to move around more. And so playing with Panam, even just on your team, if you're not playing with her, feels very different because suddenly movement is almost a non-issue, because literally to have somebody else move one, it costs 1 RAM. So it's like very quick just to be able to go and do that. And so I actually thought that was really nice. I then played as Judy, for instance, and with Judy, she can open doors anywhere on the map and add time. So Judy's a much more chill thing because you don't have to worry about manipulation to get the doors open, which if you're playing once you introduce crafting, I think in the third prologue. No, I think it's actually the second mission as well, where they add crafting. You can focus those cards that are well, that's not it, but either way, the orange cards, right? These hands that can now actually go in crafting. So you're crafting a lot more when you have Judy, and doors are just opening and closing all the time, right? So like, she's very good at that. Then you have like Jackie over here, and he's like ambidextrous. He has the 2 guns. So he literally has an extra die that's just his gun that you're rolling with your other guns. So he's literally always rolling more and doing more damage like from the get-go. They have different levels. So for instance, she has more orange because of that attack one. That's kind of a double one. He has more, I think, red because he's just attacking more often. V, for instance, is more versatile because it's like the main character, you can level him up any way you want. So some of his cards have 2 different colors, and you use the one that your highest rank in, whereas none of the others have that. It's always that blue card's a blue card, but he might have a blue and red card. Then even with the Mantis Blades, you have you replace some of the cards where you're doing extra damage, but only if you're adjacent or in the same spot as a person. So if you equip V with Manta Blade with a shotgun that also does more damage, then when you're close, you're doing a lot more damage close up. So you're really running up to people. So there's a lot of nuance there, and you can semi-customize how they play too. For instance, you can get more legendary cards that add more time, or have a slide to cover mechanic where you're like really moving through zones quickly as you kind of snap to the next closest wall and stuff like that. There's a lot of that kind of stuff going on that I thought actually worked really well. It actually felt different. V with Mantis Blades plays a little bit different than V, who plays different than Jackie, who plays different than Panam, who plays different than Judy, right? So they all just kind of actually have a kind of different feel for them, to the point where you're prioritizing objectives based on how the character plays. So as Judy, I wasn't great at attacking, but I could certainly get to places very quickly and hack into things. So if an objective involved hacking into something, I always had a lot of RAM. She was very good at gathering RAM and doing those. So that's where I went. Whereas there might be an enemy there, in which case, hey, I want Jackie to come with me so he can kill the guy while I'm doing that, right? So there's a lot of that kind of interaction, which I thought was really good. Characters, at least the ones they have here, actually play pretty different. Additionally, they did already incorporate one thing that I liked. So when I first played the game in Essenspiel, and I played with the owner of the company, and we had a great time with it, and one of the feedback I had was the card art didn't always match the character. So in other words, it had something like this, like sniping, but it didn't necessarily even have a sniper on it, and it certainly didn't show, you know, Panam holding her sniper. They've gone and done that. They were like, all right, well, let's go in and add more. And again, maybe they were doing that ahead of time. I don't know. But even so, now her sniper card has a sniper on it. Now, that's not really what you're looking at, but it's nice that it has that. Additionally, they all have their own starting cards. So there are some generic cards that you get to upgrade, but it means that even the different Vs, male and female, have a different set of cards, because one has more feminine looking hands and one has more masculine looking hands. So you literally are playing a version of V depending on what picture you choose to kind of match. So Jackie will have, you know, his tattoos and different, you know, art that'll show kind of where he's at, versus Panam versus Judy, who will have a different tattoo in her hand and stuff like that. So it was just a really nice way of showing that little bit of difference that I think adds a lot to the immersion. I actually really liked that. Thought that was pretty cool. All right, let's talk more mechanics. Crafting. Crafting is a big part of the video game, and here I think it's a big part of the board game too. You do it a lot, and it's a lot of fun. So crafting, you get to craft 3 different things, and then in each cooldown you draw 6 more and get to pick from the crafting cards. And they can do things like give you a level up, to do extra damage, to be able to move farther, or, you know, be able to break a wall down or whatever. So you can craft all these different things. Which is awesome. And you craft them by playing the orange card, and then instead of opening a door or interacting with something, you're crafting instead. So you're quickly like crafting your inventory or whatever. And you take these cubes off. And then once the cubes are off, it's now crafted, and you can just use it as you see fit, which is super cool. And really, they do come in handy, and it can help accentuate, for instance, Judy, well, she can't attack very much, but maybe if I craft a whole bunch of like those attack things, I can actually take a guy out pretty easily. For instance, you can get a couple threes, so if you craft 4 times, you now can do 6 damage to somebody. They typically have 5 damage. Boom, you just outright killed a guy the moment you walked in, and that's because you kind of crafted on your way there, or came prepared, or pre-crafted it, or whatever, right? So there are definitely a lot of nuance in the crafting that can very much change how a character interacts or change your strategy in a very cool way. It can also kind of come in a pinch. Now that kind of also goes to the boost, which you can also get. You can gain more of, and you can refresh them by over-healing yourself past max, which is cool, because they're kind of one-time use, and they allow you to gain a ram, do a damage, do an extra move, do an interact, and that interact and move in particular can really make or break something. But honestly, they all can, because you might get that one extra ram to then be able to do something special. For instance, Jackie can do rerolls, so he can reroll his dice. Super good. Again, he's very good at shooting. So it's just, there's a lot there, and the nuance and the crafting, super cool. The loot also is a blast. So the loot's really easy, like literally like as you walk over it, boom, you gain the loot. You don't look at it yet. You'll look at it in the cooldown because you're busy going real fast, right? And then you actually see what you got, and oh, look, I get to gain a legendary card. So now suddenly I get to get another card. It goes on the top of the deck, and I'm able to like gain it. I forget if that one goes to the top of the deck or discard. I'll have to remember. The wounds act different. It doesn't matter. The point is, you got a cool extra, special card that now is better, or now you have an extra red card. So if you're leveled up in red, you're doing more red cards. It's already better, right? So that's also really good. I thought the loot was great. The loot gets you more than just that, though, because you could gain an extra boost. You could gain an extra level. You could gain a fully crafted gear, right? You could gain a weapon. So let's talk about quest rewards and weapons. So how the quests work is you have a set of main objectives, and then you might or might not have some side objectives. And each objective gives you some reward, often a little level up where you get to gain a new gem, which lets you go farther down on here to do more, right? Which lines up really nice. It's a nice, smooth gameplay. With that being said, it also has these side ones as well, and often those get you something quite good. Sometimes it's just a little bit of extra RAM, sometimes it's something like a full weapon, and you can see what weapon it might even be, right? All the quest rewards are available there, or again, you can loot one. Now, these weapons are directly from the game, and they are fantastic. They are all a straight upgrade to your main weapon, and so rolling them is strictly pretty much just better. That being said, some with the Fenrir, it's either doing 3 damage, or it's doing 2 damage, or it's hurting you because it's a fire-based weapon, right? Or there might be one that allows you to reroll. For instance, one of ours, Jackie, got this one that allows him to just keep rerolling, and he did like 6 damage. Eventually, we're like, stop, he's dead, stop shooting him, right? Because it kept rerolling. Oh, I get to reroll, that's another one. Okay, now I stopped. But it could keep going, and some people are better at rolling than I am. There's some, like the shotgun, which does extra damage if you're close up, right? There's some that almost always hit. It's always only 1 damage, but it almost always hits. There's only 1 blank, right? So there's these different dice that you get to upgrade with, which is super cool and feels great when you use them. So I really liked the weapons, and they felt like an actual power jump. Like, now I can handle guys better. Part of that is because I feel your base gun is kind of sucky. It is 50-50. On whether or not you're doing 1 damage or 0 damage. It's not even doing a lot of damage. So unless you're Jackie over here with his extra fancy dice that has more hits and stuff like that, you're just rolling kind of 1, in which case the enemies are typically hitting you pretty hard, but you're not hitting back a lot. Most of your damage, especially without an extra weapon, comes from the little attack symbol, right? That literally does 1 damage, or 1 damage there, or 1 damage via something else, or the craft or whatever that does some damage. Not really rolling the dice. I felt that was actually kind of, it's fine for the game, and I'm not like I'm being nuanced here, but it did feel kind of weird that shooting a guy with the dice, which represents your weapon die here, right, isn't the best way to deal damage typically. It's more playing the card. And so it always felt like rolling the dice equals the weapon because it's my weapon's die. And yet shooting a guy with my weapon seemed almost like a waste of time more often than not. It might do 1 damage. Maybe 50-50, who knows, right? And so these guys are like shooting you up and doing 2 damage all the time, and you're like, I shot him once, woohoo. They can even like drop you directly to 0. Like they can like headshot you. Like they can hit pretty hard, and you're here doing like nothing. Now again, those extra damage from the cards, from different quick hacks, from different boosts, all that kind of stuff does help. And a weapon upgrade now feels like a real, I can do some damage with this weapon. That feels good too. But Yeah, it was kind of a weird mismatch that your base gun doesn't really do a lot. It seemed kind of odd to me. But it works out in the game because there's plenty of other ways to do damage. All right, let's talk about some stuff I didn't really see a whole lot of, some more than others. So there are story events that can happen during the story, and you make decisions, and you can have people live or die, and all that kind of stuff. I like that. I think the story events were very cool. So as somebody who played the video game, I understood a lot of the references to the people and what was going on, and so that helped me make decisions. They also have this map book. Again, I wasn't able to play this fully. That is also in the app as well, but you do have, like, a different, like, map that you can go through and do different events and stuff like that. And again, in the app, you can actually move around and click, oh, we're going to do this mission next, or we're going to visit the Ripper Dock or whatever. That wasn't in the full game yet, but it will be. So essentially, you can do the main quest, or you can go do, an Afterlife bar kind of, generator, or you can go do the side thing, or, there's all these different things you can do. And honestly, I think that's pretty cool, and it fits the RPG side of the board game, or the video game, I think, quite well. So, and the open world aspect of it and stuff. So that was pretty cool, but again, wasn't able to interact with it too much. All right, so that is really it when it comes to what I didn't see. What I did see was a lot of scenario variety as well, which again kind of adds to the nuance and the fun. So obviously each one uses a different map layout. That being said, they're mostly all the same with the central elevator. That might change in the final game. Don't know. There's going to be like hidden whole like mission quests or some junk. I don't know. There's going to be a lot more to do, obviously, in the main game than this demo. That being said, even in the prologue, you're doing everything. So for instance, in one of them now, instead of just removing the whole guy, oh, well, now actually remove that, and this acts as a corpse. And if you walk over, just like you do the loot, you gain the corpse, and then on the off time, when you're breathing out and cooling down and all that kind of stuff during the second phase where it's not timed, and you're resolving loot, you resolve your corpses too by searching them and getting gear from them, which I thought was pretty cool, and it's a little different than what you're doing otherwise. There are some where there's not really, it's just, hey, kill everybody that you can and then get out of there, and with some side things where you can go and open some weapon caches, to some where you're having to like snipe out of a window and then go over here and like search through some files in a closet somewhere, right? Because there's like this little room here, but you could just like break through the wall on the other side and get to it that way. So there's a lot of like fun kind of scenario things that you're doing that really kind of add variety to the gameplay. And from what they said, it just gets more from the prologue after that, where you're really doing more unique things per mission. So it's not all the same thing over and over again. Additionally, you can't always swap your characters out, at least for a lot of them. There are some that are like multi-tiered, but otherwise you can, because there's like a soft reset on each one. And so you can play Panam on one, and then Jackie on another one, and then V with Manta Blaze on another one, and then Judy on a and so you can kind of change it like that, or even change the kind of cards that you're getting. And so between the situations on the map, between the different scenario rules, and how you can level up somebody and who you play, there's a lot of variety I felt from scenario to scenario, where it was never felt like the same thing we were doing each time. Now, the level up system, or the skill-based level up system, actually works really well, and it's because it affects gameplay as well. So let me kind of explain. So I kind of talked about how, okay, so there's another problem here, and I'll show that in a moment, where you can level up something, right? And if you level it up 1, 2, or 3, so you start at 1, so at 2 or 3, you use more and more symbols, can do more and more on that color cards. You specialize in moving and healing, or attacking, or hacking, or, whatever the orange one is, like the interact or whatever, right? So you can do those, and that's really cool. If you gain 4, you actually get to get a card of that color. So if you max it out, it's like, oh, you really like that? Well, here's another card that uses that, right? And again, they can get up to where you use all 4. So these are extra special cards with 4 instead of 3, though not always. And some of them are really, really good. Like there's one fun one here. As long as you're at level 3 in the red, you're doing 6 damage. It's pretty much outright killing somebody, or killing 2 guys at 3 health, whatever it is. You can do quite a bit. So they're really powerful. They're fun to upgrade. So you have that. So it's interacting with your cards. It's interacting with the cards you have there, or the cards you're getting. The loot tokens, because often you can get an upgrade. I just happened to pick it up. Look at that. So I just got another red at the next cooldown for that. That's really cool. Even some of the weapons do this. So for instance, there's like this weapon here. I forget which one it is, but it's one of those like tech weapons. So as long as you're high in the blue, this does 1 plus however many level you are. So it can do like 1 to 4 damage, depending on how tech you are. So if you're leveled up in there, not only are you getting legendary cards, but you get that gun as well. Now you're doing more in your gun. It's just very nuanced in how much it interacts with and changes things. And that's really cool. And you can gain in different ways. So like you can craft skills, right? You can loot skills. And then you can also get them from doing objectives, and there's probably a few other ways as well that you can do it. So just a lot of fun there. I really enjoyed leveling up, and it felt pretty impactful. Now, before I move off, this was kind of, I was going to save this to last as kind of like last little bits, but as it stands right now, the orange and orange is what I'm going to call it. The dark orange / maybe red, and the darkish orange / really, I think just orange instead of yellow, look close enough to me where I've now made it mistakes 3 times. Where, for instance, in this one, I actually put an orange, or like a red, and then 3 oranges in a row. Again, I am slightly colorblind, so I try to always comment on this, and the lighting isn't always the best either. And just, I mean, people have different abilities to tell apart. They do have, like, some symbols on the dice, but I don't think that's really for that. I'm not sure exactly what that's for, but yeah, the orange and the red, too close. And I kept making mistakes where I would grab the wrong one. Same with even the token here. I know it probably looks very different to you right now. Again, I don't even know how close you are, but it's close enough to where every now and then I would put them in the wrong pile, or I'd put them on the wrong board or whatever. It just, I need a little bit more. I think the orange should be more yellow. I think that would help a lot. Or the red, a deeper red, but I don't know if that'll look necessarily as good. Maybe a little bit more yellow in the red would work even. I'm not exactly sure. Either way, I kept making that mistake, and it's funny I made it even for this video. Now, speaking of, this is mostly how we left it. I reset up the board, so I didn't show you the last mission. But besides that, everything else is pretty much as it was for the most part, except like a lot of like the dice are off of this one, and it was actually more hectic than it looks like now. But you see how these cards are just flipped out here and stuff. It's because when you're going so fast, you don't have time to when you use it, you just flip it over real quick or throw it out there. I use this or whatever. You're going super quick. You're throwing doors off. The door's all right, that, and so you kind of make a mess. So it gets a little hectic. Again, I actually had a lot of fun with it, and it's not something we normally do in board games, but it does happen. One bad thing did happen where because it's not like a dual layer board, in that I would like the bottom layer to maybe come out so the cards sat on the bottom layer, because as it stands now, these can slide underneath the board. And I did that once, and then I lifted up and just shot everything across because I was going real quick, because you have to reshuffle sometimes. And again, you're trying to do it as quickly as you can, like everything in the game when you're dealing with that. And so if it had the dual layer where the bottom layer came out a little bit so that the card is set on that, I think that would solve the problem. So a little bit there. But either way, your game board is going to look like a mess afterwards, and all it shows is you had a lot of fun, in my opinion. But it definitely gets a little hectic. Piles just get strewn about everywhere, and like it's just it gets bad real quick. In fact, this is actually probably pretty clean for it. And again, some of it's because I did reset it a little bit. Okay, one other small app thing that I think would help is currently when you do complete it, you have to click complete mission, and then you're good to go. If the timer runs out on the last fight, it means you've lost. Now, it doesn't give you so you could win it and then have to go to update it. And this actually happened to us, and we barely won it. So I tried to click the complete, and then it's like, oh no, game over. And then I had to skip the narration chat and click retry mission. And then instantly, as it started the timer, it goes 3, 2, 1, and it goes, and then I have to click complete. If there was a final, hey, did you end up completing that and just didn't say, that would have been great. Also, it allows me to lie. For instance, that's what I ended up doing on the last one, just to see things through. Because like I said, we couldn't beat the last mission. So I was like, whatever. The app doesn't know that I'm being dishonest with it. Yeah, sure, we beat that. And you can always do that too. It's not controlling dice rolls or anything like that, so you can lie to it if you want. The only thing you can't really do that I'm aware of is undo choices. So if you did a choice and don't like it, you can't just be like, forget it, maybe I did that, like you could in a normal board game. And again, this is the app currently. They could add that in where they're like, actually, you know what, never mind, I did let that guy live. Or, you know what, no, he was a jerk, I actually killed him. And I fully support games that you could really kind of control that way. So the more the app allows me to lie to it, the better, in my opinion, or at least the easier I can lie to it, the better, in my opinion. So in this case, we did lie to it, but even so, I can see legitimately winning right at the very end. Oh no, and then you almost get it. And again, it was close, and so I was like, I'll give it to us. That was part 1 of the last one. Then the last one was the last half of the last prologue. Did not happen well at all. That was tough, but I've already told you that. So anyway, a little nuance there. All right, now another thing that's interesting. I've played Cyberpunk 2077, loved it a lot, spent a lot of hours on it, and quite enjoyed it. I actually played it before like the big combat update, and then they reset all my skill points, and then I did it again, and I had to install new mods, and you do the whole thing. You know how it is, right? So I played on Steam, so I was able to mod it. But either way, played a lot of Cyberpunk 2077, so I understand the terms, I understand what they're referring to, I get it. My wife has seen me play it on occasion, more than on occasion, so she's kind of aware of it to some degree. My son had not played it at all, and he had a lot of questions. He doesn't even know what Arasaka is, right? And so this kind of assumes, at least again, as it is now, this could change, but as it is now, the demo very much, I think, assumes you know what's going on. Now, it's not the most story-driven game ever. And what I mean by that is, like, currently, for instance, it says, oh, you gotta snipe these guys out, but it didn't actually, like, lead that in any narration. It's just, you set up the scenario, and then it's, oh, I guess there's a sniper there, I guess, or you have to assign position. But it didn't, like, lead it up. It's just, that's one of the objectives you read. You know, snipe here. So there's a little bit of flavor, but it doesn't, like, super lead into it. So he was able to enjoy the game and have a lot of fun playing the game without knowing if Arasaka is a person or if these are military or security or what's going on, right? But it does throw out a lot of these, things, and it kind of explains what a fixer is, for instance. But then it doesn't explain like the how Arasaka is like a family-run company, and that it doesn't really do a great job at necessarily explaining everything around it that you would from the board game. So if you're aware of either the tabletop game or if you're aware of the actual video game this is based on, you're good. If not, just know that at least as it stands now, this doesn't really super explain it well. And there's a lot to go over. I can understand it not doing that. But as an FYI, if you have no idea what Cyberpunk is, you might be a little lost in the story. All right, two more things and then kind of an overview. So one of the things I think that this does really well is it plays better with more players. Now, again, this is a demo. It could change, of course, over time. But I think right now, I think its minimum is 2. But really, I think 3 or even 4 is probably best. And the reason I say that is twofold. First of all, just inherently, if there are more players, you have more time to just look at your cards or shuffle your deck or do whatever. There's just a little bit more of a gap between your turns. If it's 2 players, it can go super quick. And again, that's great if you want to fit a whole bunch of turns in and do a whole bunch of actions, right? That's awesome. But at the same time, like the longer the loop, almost the better, as long as time allows. And then time adjusts based off the player, so it should adjust accordingly, but it just gives you a little bit more breathing room to do it. So that's one thing. I guess for 3 reasons. Second of all, again, they do kind of specialize. So for instance, Jackie's not great at net running, right? Like his quick hacks, his ram, this is not exactly what he's built for, right? So unless you purposely do that, that's great. But V, again, he's solid, right? But if we just done 2-player and it was just Pan Am and Jackie, we're not going to necessarily be doing a lot of RAM stuff, at least not like overly. Now, we could compensate for that, but at the same time, it's just helpful to have somebody like V who can do a little bit of everything, or Judy who really specializes in it, right? So if one is like, oh, hey, you have to like use 2 RAM, and it's like, well, or I think we had Jackie once where he only had like, I swear he only had like 1 interact card. Like it wasn't a whole lot. And he had to do an interaction or an orange card, and it just wasn't working out for him, right? I think he has 2, but either way, like if you don't have those 2 cards, they're already in there. You're gonna have to go through your whole deck to get it again. Somebody else might have more cards than that, so it plays better with multiple. Lastly, a lot of the objectives require you to do 2 different things in 2 different locations. For instance, you might have to be on B and somebody else has to be on C, and the person on C then has to spend a boost while you're on B. And so you kind of have to be in 2 different locations. Because you're limited on the amount of fights, which again doesn't adjust based off of the people. If you only had 2 people, you kind of have, and especially if somebody isn't a good fighter, you have to deal with the person. Either you're ignoring the enemy, which isn't super cyberpunky necessarily, but you're going there to A, and then you have to go to B, and then you have to go to B and C and split up like that. And it plays better with multiple people. Just flat out, that's my opinion. It's playable with less. I wouldn't choose to necessarily play it with less for each mission. Some missions I think will be easier than others, and depending on your characters, I think it works out, and you can't pick your characters. Just in general, I think the more the better. All right, now I actually saved this for last, but this is a good-looking game. I love it. I mean, it's just like the box itself looks fantastic. I love the yellow. It's really stark. It looks great. But the art like I said, the different almost like game art that they have here, but it's not, and the different wounds it's all in first person. All the art like is in first person except for you, and even then when you're doing you have the one that says your name, but and like a little zoomed in, but then you have a full body look at you without any obstruction. It's just that's your character, right? The board is all themed nice. The different towers and stuff you're going through are good. I imagine there's some open world ones you'll eventually get to. Perhaps not. I'm not exactly sure if you'll do any street level stuff or anything like that. I think it looks really good. The miniatures, again, they're fantastic. They're all sculpted bases. They even have like unique shaped bases, right? They're all really in theme and character. That looks really good. They're just really, really good. Even these like prototype like spin down dice to like quickly take health away are nice. Now they're a little big, but at the same time, you're not having a whole bunch on the same spot or anything like that either. I think it looks really good. I think the entire aesthetic just is on point with this game. Oh, here, look, here's another orange in the darker orange / red. I really enjoyed it. Again, the card art, just everything. It's just a pretty looking game, and Go On Board does a stellar job at final quality too. So I fully expect this to kind of match the amazing quality in the final product as well. They've yet to make a game that I didn't think was produced well, even way back when I reviewed Titans, way back in the day. So they've been doing good, and I think they'll continue to do it. So it's a darn pretty looking game too. Okay, so that leaves me, I guess, to the very end here, right? And I mean, I kind of started it out again. I'm not like hiding what I think of this game. It's a lot of fun, and you guys know the kind of games that I play. I love playing games for fun. I've told this story before, and I'll say it again, but I have honestly, on multiple occasions in the past, been tempted to rate a game based off of how many times people were like, yes or no, or, I love that. I love the fact that even like Warhammer, when I play that, and you roll for hits, and then you roll for wounds, and then you roll your defense, and you roll your invuln saves and all that. Like there's multiple times where you're like, I got this, and I got that, and oh no, I lost it. Like, I love that roller coaster of emotions. That's why I like dice. This isn't so dice heavy. It's actually fairly card heavy. But at the same time, it's like, okay, go do that, do that. Okay, I got him. And then, you need an extra move. I can give you an extra. Love it. Had a blast. I've enjoyed every single game session I've had with this game, even when we lost. Even if, there's maybe a little work that still needs to be done, which I'm sure they will do. I liked the crafting. I liked the quick hacks. I liked the characters. I like the mission structure, the different scenario stuff we're doing. I like the game flow. It's a fun game. It's a fun game. Is it one I want to play every time? No, I like a chill game too. And this is not a chill game. It's kind of stressful. Like I said, you're like under the gun. Oh my gosh. But again, I don't have very many games like that. Six Siege is probably the closest I have to that. And as you know, Six Siege was actually rated really good. I rated that one well also. For anybody who did end up finally getting the game, most of them, I believe, did enjoy it. And again, it's that little timer thing where you're up against the gun. It's just fun. It's just fun. I've enjoyed it. So yeah, that's Cyberpunk 2077 from Go On Board, in concert officially with CD Projekt Red and stuff. Like it's really, really good. It is on GameFound right now, so you can go in and check the link in the description below. Obviously, you find yourself there. See if what they have available is something that you want. They do have a lot of stuff. I know Johnny Silverhand's over there. They got other stuff planned, I'm sure. So super excited to see everything there. They have the Mantis Blades V version and stuff. It's going to be cool. I'm excited for the campaign. I've enjoyed every time I've sat down with this game, so I guess that says enough for me. So yeah, I mean, again, it's been a long time since I've done a review like this. It's a long form review. It's nuanced. It's talking about actual game, scenarios that I was in and stuff like that. If you enjoy the effort that this kind of video takes, especially on my plate, then do leave a like or a comment in the video saying so. Subscribe if you want to see more. Obviously, I cover a lot of news. I'm covering a lot of games like this. So if this is the kind of game you're into, this is probably a channel for you, because I like these kind of games a lot and I cover them a lot. Deep dives into the industry, I do a lot of that. Some unboxings where I critique all the components and stuff like that. Guys, I always appreciate you. There's a link down to the campaign. There's a link down to the end of the AM. Feel free to check those out. And additionally, I posted an early view on this on Patreon or on my YouTube membership. So if you'd like to join either of those, all that's linked down there as well. Guys, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye, guys.